My children, the body was never designed to break down with age. What you call inflammation, weakness, and fat is simply the result of cells being starved of what they truly need. When you restore energy at the cellular level, the body heals itself naturally. This message is not about medicine. It's about nourishment, truth, and reclaiming your strength.
We are told that after a certain age, inflammation is normal, fat gain is unavoidable, and muscle loss is permanent. But that is one of the biggest lies ever sold about the human body. What if the real problem isn't aging at all, but silent inflammation slowly shutting down your cells? I discovered this the hard way until I started taking just 5 grams of one misunderstood substance every single day. No extreme workouts, no starvation diets. Yet inflammation began to fade, stubborn fat started shrinking, and muscle that I thought was gone for good began to return. This idea isn't new. Dr. Sebi warned for decades that when the body is properly nourished at a cellular level, disease and degeneration lose their grip. In this video, I'll show you exactly what that 5 grams is, why most people use it wrong, and how it can change the way your body ages, starting from the inside out. The substance is creatine monohydrate, taken at 5 grams per day, and despite decades of misunderstanding, it is one of the most researched and most misunderstood compounds ever connected to human strength, inflammation control, and cellular energy. Creatine is not a steroid, not a drug, and not a synthetic shortcut. It is a naturally occurring compound found in small amounts in foods and produced in the body. And, its primary role is to fuel cellular energy through ATP, the molecule that powers every movement, repair process, and metabolic reaction inside you. What most people don't realize is that chronic inflammation is often a sign of energy starvation at the cellular level, not simply wear and tear, and this is exactly where creatine changes everything. When cells lack sufficient energy, they enter survival mode, inflammation rises, fat storage increases, and muscle tissue is broken down to conserve resources, which is why so many people over 40 feel inflamed, weak, and heavier despite eating less and moving more. By supplying 5 grams of creatine daily, you are restoring the energy currency of the cell, allowing muscles, nerves, and even immune cells to function efficiently again. This is why inflammation begins to calm down, not because creatine is a painkiller, but because cells no longer need to signal distress. From a fat loss perspective, inflammation traps fat by disrupting insulin signaling and mitochondrial function, and when mitochondria regain energy efficiency, the body becomes willing to release stored fat instead of defending it. This is why many people notice their waist shrinking without drastic calorie restriction, because the metabolic environment has shifted from defensive to functional. So muscle growth actually follows the same logic, especially as we age. You see, muscle loss after 40 isn't just about not trying hard enough. It's also driven by reduced cellular energy, less anabolic signaling, and more muscle breakdown caused by inflammation. Now, creatine steps in to help with all three by improving phosphocreatine availability, boosting your training capacity even with lighter activity, cutting down on muscle protein breakdown, and really enhancing the body's ability to recover and rebuild tissue. This idea, honestly, lines up really closely with the core philosophy taught by Dr. Sebi. He always emphasized that disease starts when our cells don't get the proper nourishment and electrical balance they need. And while creatine wasn't part of Dr. Sebi's traditional herbal framework, the principle still holds true. When our cells receive what they need to function, degeneration slows down and repair speeds up. One of the most powerful, and honestly, rarely discussed effects of creatine is its impact on systemic inflammation markers. Research is showing reductions in oxidative stress and inflammatory signaling when cellular energy balance is restored, especially in muscle and nervous tissue. This explains why joint discomfort often improves, recovery feels faster, and daily fatigue fades, even before visible body changes occur. Another critical reason creatine works so well at just 5 grams is that higher doses are unnecessary for saturation and often lead people to quit due to bloating or discomfort, while a steady daily intake gently saturates muscle tissue without stress. Unlike stimulants or fat burners that push the body harder, creatine supports the body's existing systems, making it especially suitable for older adults who want strength and resilience without overtaxing the nervous system. It also plays a role in glucose handling, which is why, fat loss improves without extreme dieting, as muscles become better at absorbing glucose and using it for energy instead of allowing it to be converted into fat. Importantly, this compound does not work in isolation, but improves the efficiency of whatever activity level you already have, meaning even walking, light resistance, or daily movement becomes more productive because muscles can generate more force with less strain. This is why muscle firmness and strength often return even in people who believe their best years were behind them. Creatine also supports brain and nerve energy, which, explains improved mental clarity and reduced perception of fatigue. This is another factor that's closely tied to inflammation and aging. The reason so many people fail to experience these benefits isn't because creatine doesn't work, but honestly because they take it inconsistently, pair it with dehydrating habits, or abandon it too early, expecting instant transformation rather than, cellular restoration. When used correctly and consistently, 5 grams of creatine per day becomes less of a supplement and more of a foundational support for energy, strength, and metabolic health. It addresses inflammation, fat storage, and muscle loss at their shared root cause, rather than just chasing symptoms one by one. To use creatine correctly and, really unlock its full effect on inflammation reduction, fat loss, and muscle restoration, consistency and simplicity matter far more than complexity or extreme protocols. The body just responds best when cellular energy is restored gradually and reliably, rather than forced. The most effective approach is taking 5 grams of creatine monohydrate once daily, preferably at the same time each day. This way, muscle and nerve cells remain steadily saturated with phosphocreatine, which honestly keeps ATP regeneration efficient around the clock. A lot of people obsess over timing, but the truth is, regular daily intake is way more important than whether it's taken in the morning or evening. That said, taking it with water and staying well hydrated throughout the day is essential because creatine pulls water into muscle cells and, dehydration can really blunt its benefits. In the first few days, many people notice subtle but meaningful shifts. There's less morning stiffness, slightly better energy, and reduced soreness after activity. These are early signs that inflammation signaling is calming down as cells regain their energy balance. Within the first 1 to 2 weeks, the body starts reallocating resources more efficiently. Muscles become better at absorbing glucose, insulin sensitivity improves, and fat storage pressure eases. That's actually why, clothes might start fitting differently, even if there aren't dramatic changes on the scale. This stage is really critical because many people quit too early expecting dramatic visual results before the internal repair process is complete. What they might not realize is that fat loss and muscle rebuilding are actually downstream effects of cellular recovery. By weeks 3 to 4, muscle tissue responds more noticeably, even in older adults, because creatine reduces muscle protein breakdown while improving the ability to generate force during everyday movements. This actually turns simple activities like walking, climbing stairs, or light resistance into effective muscle-preserving stimuli. This is when people often report feeling firmer, steadier on their feet, and more confident in their strength. And that's especially important for seniors who are concerned about independence and falls. As inflammation continues to decline, joints move more freely, recovery improves, and chronic aches that once felt permanent begin to fade into the background. Not because pain is being masked, but because tissues are no longer operating in an energy-deficient, inflamed state. One of the biggest mistakes people make during this phase is combining creatine with poor hydration, excessive alcohol, or extreme low-calorie diets. These habits, honestly, can really undermine cellular repair and slow your progress. Another common error, which I see quite a bit, is cycling on and off creatine. This actually prevents full saturation and leads to inconsistent results. Creatine works best when it's treated as a long-term foundational nutrient, not just a short-term performance trick. And, when it's paired with simple movement, enough water, and sufficient mineral intake, its effects really do compound over time. By weeks 5 to 6 and beyond, fat loss becomes more visible, especially around the abdomen. That's because reduced inflammation allows hormonal signaling to normalize, which enables the body to finally release stored fat, instead of defending it as a protective response. At the same time, muscle fibers retain more water and energy, giving them a fuller, stronger appearance without unnatural bulk, which is why many people describe the change as looking healthier rather than artificially muscular. Another underappreciated benefit during this stage is improved mental energy and reduced brain fatigue because creatine supports energy metabolism in nerve cells as well, which lowers stress signaling and indirectly reduces inflammation throughout the body. This mental clarity reinforces consistency, making it easier to stay active, eat mindfully, and maintain healthy habits without relying on willpower alone. While creatine is generally well tolerated, certain individuals should approach it thoughtfully, particularly those with existing kidney conditions or those taking medications that affect fluid balance. And, consulting a qualified professional can help personalize use without fear or misinformation. What's important to understand is that creatine does not override the body's intelligence. It supports it, giving cells the energy they need to repair, regulate, and rebuild naturally. Over time, this shifts the entire aging trajectory, replacing the expectation of decline with a state of resilience, strength, and metabolic flexibility. Instead of chasing, multiple supplements for joints, fat loss, energy, and muscle, creatine actually addresses their shared root cause by restoring cellular energy efficiency. That's really why its impact feels so broad and sustainable. Aging does not automatically mean inflammation, weakness, or fat gain. Those outcomes are honestly just signs of depletion, not destiny. When the body is given what it needs at the cellular level, it remembers how to heal, adapt, and strengthen, even later in life. This is why taking 5 grams of creatine daily isn't really about chasing youth or extremes, but about reclaiming function, independence, and confidence, so you can move through life with strength instead of limitation. If this perspective changed how you view inflammation, fat, and muscle after midlife, take a moment to support the channel. Sharing this information helps more people break free from unnecessary decline and, step into a healthier, stronger future built on understanding rather than fear.